Laura from Doggy U, and today we're going to be talking about the biggest dog training mistakes and how you can avoid them when you're training your dog. If you're new to this channel, welcome. I'm a certified guide dog mobility instructor, service dog trainer, and pet dog trainer. And today I'm going to be teaching you how to avoid the biggest and most common training mistakes so that you can get faster results and reduce frustration when you're training your dog. The first common training mistake that you can avoid has to do with treat delivery. Once we've marked the dog for doing the thing we want them to do, we want to try and reinforce in those static positions, especially for your sit, down, and heel position. We want the dog to remain in the position that we want them to be in while we reinforce. So for instance, if we want our dog to remain in heel position, I want to treat them so that they can easily take the treat from my hand while their shoulder and front legs are in line with my front legs. If I'm teaching this sit, I almost want to push that cookie into the dog so they remain in that sit position. A lot of times I'll see people try to treat too far from the dog and then the dog will get up to try and get that cookie. Same thing with the down. Our down is just the beginning stages of our stay. So when we treat, I like to treat between the dog's paws, right there in the middle on the ground. Over time, instead of the dog trying to get up to get the cookie from you, they're going to look down on the ground and expect the cookie to appear right in front of them, which means you'll start to have a really nice automatic stay in that down right away. So remember, when we're talking about static positions, deliver those treats right to the dog's mouth in the exact position we'd like them to stay in. Avoiding this next mistake will revolutionize how you think about training. What we want to think about is what do we want our dog to do instead of what we don't want them to do. So humans are really good at thinking in the negative so they can think of all the things that are going wrong. But really what we want to do in dog training is think about the picture we want to see. So for instance, common problem for a lot of people is their dog jumping on people when they go in the house. And most people want their dog to not jump on people. But what you want to do is reverse that sentence and say, what do I want my dog to do? How do I want my dog to behave when someone comes into my house? Is it I'd like them to sit politely while petting, or I'd like them to go lay down on the mat while the person comes and sits down? Either of those are really good options, and they're things that you can actually train. Dogs don't do well in the absence of behavior, but what they do well in is you showing them exactly what you want in the situation. So now instead of teaching your dog not to jump, you're going to teach them to sit when someone puts their hand down to pet them. Then you've got this nice behavior that you can use both in the home and out in the world, and you can clearly ask your dog for what you want. So think about your behaviors as what you want out of the dog, what you want the picture to look like, instead of what you don't want out of them. Your dog will do much better, and so will you. Another common mistake I see is not managing behavior first. Management is always going to be easier than training when you first get started because management can typically be applied right away, while training may take a few days or a few weeks for you and your dog to accomplish together. So we want to think about how can I create a management strategy to stop the behavior I don't want from happening. A good example is dogs that bolt out the door. So if I have a dog that's a door bolter, every time I open the door they want to run out, I'm going to start with a management strategy. I'm going to put up 2 baby gates and basically create an airlock so the dog can't run out the door when I open it. So I'll go through one baby gate, close it, go through the next baby gate, close it, and then go out the door. So I can start managing that behavior. They're no longer practicing that opening the door means I bolt out. And then concurrently with my management, I can start the actual training of having the dog sit politely whenever I open a door. But the management is the thing I need to implement first so that I can make some headway in the training department. Same thing goes with puppies. If you've got a young puppy, it's so much easier to manage their environment than to teach them to not chew everything around them. So you can easily set up a nice little X-pen or a safe space in the house that doesn't have your shoes lying on the ground or carpets for them to pee on. You can create a space that's safe for them and manage their environment until they've grown up a bit and no longer have those urges to chew on all of your things. You can also give them appropriate things to chew on so that they're not tempted to chew on other things. That's a great management strategy that will save you a lot of hassle and headache in the long run. So remember, always start with management and then think about and implement your training plan. The next common mistake that you can avoid is to be a splitter, not a lumper. Most people expect their dogs to learn complicated behaviors without breaking those steps down into little chunks that the dog can understand. We think about when you're in school. You wouldn't expect a kindergartner to learn algebra right away. Instead, you're going to start with 3 plus 3. The same thing goes for our dog. We want to build little steps that we can then put together into the entire picture of what we're looking for. So what does that mean? So a lot of people want their dog to be able to walk loosely in heel position with them. But to be able to do that, we actually need a couple things first. So first, we need a dog that pays attention to us. If we can't get the dog's attention in our house where there's not a lot going on, we certainly can't get it outside. So we need to start with teaching them to check in with us and pay attention. Once they're doing well with this, we need to teach them the position that we want to be when you're standing still. So we'll start teaching them that we're going to reinforce them on our left-hand side when you're in that position. I might use something like a prop, like a bucket, to teach them exactly where their feet should be, because anytime we can be more clear for our dog, the better. Then once they know that being next to us is a good thing, now they need to be able to check in with us from the side. And because we spend so much time rewarding our dog in front of us, dogs don't naturally stand by our side and look up at us. So we can start reinforcing for them looking up at us. Next, we need to be able to take a step. So once we can take a step together and we stay in position, awesome. Now maybe we'll take 2 steps, maybe 3. And you can see how we're going to build this slowly so that the dog understands the entire picture of what it looks like to loose leash walk next to us. But we're doing it in chunks that the dog can be successful at and understand. If your dog isn't getting it, that's really valuable information to say that maybe you need to take a step back and pivot how you're training it. Maybe you can write down a training plan and figure out how you can break what you're asking for down into smaller steps where the dog can be successful. Remember, in training, slow is fast. And if you need help learning how to split behavior and break things down for your dog, definitely join us over on the Doggy U community. There you'll find a community of service dog owner trainers and dedicated dog guardians who are also learning how to make learning more fun and less frustrating for their dogs. You can find that at patreon.com/doggyu, where you're going to have exclusive access to my unedited training sessions, exclusive step-by-step videos that you won't see on this public channel, as well as live Q&As every month where you're going to get your questions answered. I even do a live special topics every month focusing on some specific aspect of training. Last month we reviewed puppy testing so I could show you what a trainer looks for when they're selecting a puppy. This month we're going to be talking about all of those demon puppy problems, or things that are normal for puppies, and how we can curb and manage those behaviors. Things like eliminating in the house, or nipping, or chewing. All of those things, we're going to go over how to create a strategy for making that whole raising a puppy thing a little less frustrating. So come join us over on Patreon for half the cost of a latte. The next common problem I see is a lack of generalization, or not training to fluency. What does that mean? Dogs are not good generalizers. So let me give you an example of that. My dog Jake can fetch me a beer from the fridge. But if I bring him to a new location, say your house, and say, fetch me a beer, he's gonna look at me like he doesn't know what I'm talking about. Because fetching the beer is a very specific behavior in a specific context for him. He knows how to do that at my fridge, at my house. That's all to say that it's common for people to think their dogs are stubborn or stupid, when in actuality your dog is giving you information that they do not understand that behavior in that new context. They haven't been generalized, or they haven't trained to fluency. So what does that mean for you? We want to be able to start a behavior in the house, maybe your kitchen, your bedroom, your living room, and then take it to more varied locations. So maybe your deck, your driveway, your backyard. Then once the dog is doing well in those locations, you're gonna take it on the road, and you're gonna practice it in the Target parking lot or over in the park. But you wanna think about each new time that you're practicing this newer behavior as a new training session. I'll pretend the dog has never learned it before and start from the beginning. It'll take less time than it did to train it the first time, but your dog will start to learn that not only do we train everywhere, but we do this behavior lots of locations, and then they'll be able to do it in novel locations once they have that understanding. So remember, each skill needs to be trained and generalized to many new locations before your dog truly understands it. The next mistake that you can avoid is being too frugal with your treats, or said the opposite way, not being generous enough with reinforcing your dog for the work that they're doing. I often get the comment, wow, you use so many treats. And that's true. If you haven't seen my video on bringing home a service dog puppy, I'll link that down below for you to check out, because I get that comment on that video all the time. But here's the thing. The dog is going to take X amount of reinforcement episodes to learn a specific thing. I can just get that quicker by moving up that timeline. So what does that mean? Basically, if it's gonna take 100 treats for the dog to down, I'm going to do that in 3 days instead of over 5 weeks of maybe the dog guessing and sometimes getting pets and sometimes getting a treat and sometimes getting nothing. I want to really pay and reinforce for the really good work that my dog is doing so that they can learn things really, really quickly. And once they've acquired that skill, I can then generalize to other types of reinforcement like play or life events like getting to go outside once they lay down. But at first, if I am super generous with the reinforcers, the dog is going to love working with me and have a really good emotional response to doing the behavior that you want them to do. So my point here is pay generously. You're going to be feeding your dog anyway. You might as well use that food to get better behavior, a better bond to you, and a more tired and mentally exercised dog. Oh, and don't forget to use treats that your dog actually finds rewarding. For most dogs, kibble really isn't enough. So experiment and find out what your dog loves and figure out what's going to motivate your dog in different situations. So I'm going to link a video down below that if you're struggling with figuring out how to use treats and what treats to use, you can watch that and learn everything that you need to know. Another mistake is drilling or overtraining. So we want to keep all of our training sessions short. Dogs are smart, and when you make them do the same thing over and over again, they might start feeling like they're not doing it right, even if they are. We want to take our training sessions and make them short and exciting. You want to leave them wanting more. So when you're finished with the training session, you want a dog that's like, oh man, I wish we were doing more, instead of one that's already walked away and you're trying to keep its attention because you've run your training session a little bit too long. It's a really good idea to set an egg timer for 2 to 3 minutes and train for those 2 to 3 minutes right before your dog's meal. And then that's your training session for the morning. And in the evening before dinner, you're gonna do the same thing. Set an egg timer, 2 to 3 minutes of training, and then give them the rest of their meal, and you're good to go. A dog that's trained in very short little spurts throughout the day is going to acquire knowledge much more quickly than a dog that's only trained once a week on Saturday for an hour, and 15 minutes into that training session, the dog is over it. Instead, we want to create this response from the dog that they're like, ooh, goody, we get to do a training session. This will give you an attentive dog that's really excited to work with you. The last mistake that we can work really hard to avoid is expecting more of our dogs than we do from ourselves. It's our responsibility as our dog's trainer and guardian to educate ourselves as much as possible so that we can show up in the best way that we can for our dogs. You as your dog's guardian can learn how to better communicate with your dog. You can use free resources like YouTube videos and books, or sign yourself up for online courses or in-person training sessions so you can learn as much as you can so that you and your dog can be as successful as possible. We can educate ourselves on ethical training methods and make sure that we are showing up for our dogs and not asking more of them than we do of ourselves. So that means that training time is focused time with your dog. When you're going out for a walk and there's all these distractions like squirrels and people and dogs and all of that, we shouldn't be on our phone and on Instagram not paying attention to our dog, because it's not fair for us to be distracted and be scrolling when our dog wants to go scrolling over on that tree. We need to be present and show up for our dogs the way they show up for us every single day. So if you want to learn how to have a better relationship with your dog, come join us over on the DoggyU community at patreon.com/DoggyU. And check out all of my free resources here on the channel by subscribing and hitting that bell button so you get notified anytime a new video comes out. If you have questions, put them in the comments below. And if you liked this video, you'll probably like this one, so you should probably click on it. You all have an awesome day and happy training.